So thanks everyone for joining us. So we're delighted to welcome Dr. Clare Stevenson from the John Innes Centre and Dr. Danielle Hoyle from the Babraham Institute for their session on the Research Institute Technician Group, who we are and what we hope to achieve. So Clare, Danielle, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Jared. So I'm kicking this off and I'm going to explain to you how the Research Institute Technician Group started and who we are. So I'm Clare Stevenson and I work at the John Innes Centre near Norwich. I am a technician. I run a facility looking at biophysics and I'm working as a crystallographer. But I also lead the technician commitment for JIC. And I'm also on secondment working as part of the technician commitment team with Kelly Veer and Simon Breeden. So I'm quite busy. And I'm giving this presentation today with Danielle Hoyle from the Babraham Institute, and you'll hear from her later. And she's head of research operations at Babraham and also leads the technician commitment there. Okay. So I just thought I'd go over how RITG started. So John Innes Centre were a founding signatory of the technician commitments back in 2017. And when I used to attend the signatory meetings, it was very higher education focused with universities. And I'd often be the only research institute on a table at the roundtable discussions. And I realised that research institutes are structured quite differently to universities, and we have our own challenges, but they're maybe not exactly the same, although there's a lot of overlap. And over time, those of us that had signed the technician commitment got together and discussed that maybe it would be a good idea to share practice amongst research institutes so we could learn from universities and share practice from research institutes as well. So our first meeting was in 2018, and it was between John Innes Centre, Francis Crick, the Institute of Cancer Research, and MRC Hoyle. And we met in London and we discussed where we wanted to go from this. And we started to have regular meetings and discussions. And in 2019, the Babraham Institute and Wellcome Sana came on board to join us. And we carried on for that for a while. And then recently, during lockdown, we were joined by the other two MRC laboratories and the UKRI Science and Technology Facility Council. So we now consist of 9 different institutes, so we're quite big, and Danielle will tell you later what we get up to. Okay, so I hope everybody in this call is aware of the technician commitment. So it's a sector-led initiative to increase the visibility, recognition, career development and sustainability of technicians at higher education and research institutes. And it's underpinned by evaluating the impact that it has. So every signatory of technician commitment has to produce an action plan, which then they produce an assessment on. And the action plans are all visible on everybody's external website, and it's endorsed by higher management, but it's led by technicians. So all the members of RITG are all signatories of the technician commitment. So why do we decide to focus with research institutes? So there are a lot of similarities between the research institutes and the universities with respect to the themes of the technician commitment, but we kind of have a different scale and operational differences, which I guess brings us different challenges. So we try and focus on things that are more related to the research institutes. So just to highlight a few differences, research institutes, we don't tend to have the same burden of teaching responsibilities that you have at universities. So we have very few undergraduate students, just normally visitors, and most of our staff are academically based and focused on research. One of the big differences is that we don't have any difference between the academic pathway and the technical pathway in terms of grading and terms and conditions. We're all classed as staff, and I think that's the same for all the research institutes. And at first I thought that was great that we were all classed the same, but I think there's benefits and disadvantages to that. We often have a lot less supporting infrastructure. So we have a lot smaller professional services team, I think it's called in universities. And although we're smaller in general, technicians typically make up a larger proportion of the workforce. And Danielle's done a little bit of probably a non-scientific study on this, but we just looked at people's action plans to look at the number of technical staff they have and compared it as the proportion of the total workforce. Obviously, how different institutions categorize and define their technical staff is different, but we're going on the numbers that each institute says. So in blue, you've got the research institutes, and in yellow, you've got a selection of universities. So you can see that the number of technical staff, obviously they vary, but they're relatively high across the board. And actually, the first surprising thing is there's not actually that many more at big universities compared to at a smaller research institute. And when you look at the percentage of a proportion of the total, you can see, for example, at John Innes Centre, roughly 33% of our staff are classed as technicians. At Sanham, it's 63%, whereas the percentage at university is really low, generally in and around 10%. So this is just a selection, but we've seen the trend across the board. And I think it might become to be how you define your technical staff, but it's an interesting observation. So here's a word cloud of some of the job categories that at research institutes we define as the technical. So there might be like academic research assistants, there might be animal technicians working in horticulture, there might be platform managers, lab support. There's a range of different jobs, but a lot of our institutes, we also include people, for example, that work in support roles, for example, in purchasing stores, in computing, in communications. So each institute probably defines their technicians slightly differently, but I know at John Innes, and I'm sure on a lot of the other research institutes, we take an inclusive approach where basically anybody can be defined as a technician as long as they're not a student, postdoc, or an academic group leader. Okay, so with that, that's kind of how RITG started. So I'm going to pass over to Danielle, who's going to tell you about what impact we've had.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Cheers. Right. Hi, nice to meet everybody. Yeah, so take you through some of the things that we've achieved over the past couple of years. So it was always an intention to hold like sort of hybrid, it's a word of the moment, isn't it? Hybrid collaboration, to have a mix of virtual and face-to-face events, but obviously the events of the last 18 months have sort of taken over, and we have, I think, really accelerated our virtual event program, and they have been very successful, I think. So we've done them in a number of different areas. So the first one, we've done some around networking and career development, and to do that we've tried to use different platforms, so Zoom and breakout rooms, and we've used different communication channels like WonderMe and other places to try and kind of figure out the best ways to get people together and to try and replicate that sense of networking that you get in a face-to-face event. And we had a really nice event last year where we talked about each of the institutes and what we had done at an institute level. We had a session on professional registration hosted by MRC Harwell. So they were talking about their experiences of going through professional registration and then providing advice to people who were interested in that. And then we've hosted external bodies, so the NTDC and the Skills Survey, and then UKRI Skills and Talent team came to talk at one of our events just after they launched their Technician Commitment Action Plan. So they were talking about how it would impact upon institutes and what they wanted from us and how we could work collaboratively with UKRI. So it's just worth emphasising that these virtual events are not just open to the RITG group, they're not just for institutes, they are for anybody who wants to come. So anybody who has an interest in technician commitment and supporting their technical workforce is very welcome to come. And we usually advertise these through our communication channels. So the first one we wanted to just highlight is we have now a quarterly newsletter, which covers a lot of like updates and things that we have done and what we're planning in the future. And we also have social media channels, so through technician group, Slack and LinkedIn. So I think Claire and I can probably put the links to those in the Twitter feed when we're finished, so that people can find them. It's probably the easiest way to find them, or you can subscribe to the newsletter. One of the big impacts of us working as a group is that we were awarded a Technician Commitment Collaboration Award in at the beginning of this year. And so they made 3 awards, one to a group of people up in Edinburgh, the Edinburgh HEI Alliance, and then the GW4 Alliance down in the West Country, so Bath, Bristol, Cardiff and Exeter. And these awards were for people to come together to do collaborative activities to support their technician commitment agendas. And so we are using ours to support our in-person research symposium. So we have already held an in-person research symposium, and we are having one next month, all being well. So the first one was in 2019. It was held at the Crick Institute in London. Sorry, we had a series of technician talks at that. So we had a range of technicians or people who worked in technical roles from across the institutes. They were at different stages of their career, and they did different kinds of things. So we had a scientific officer from the ICR, horticulturists from John Innes, computing scientist from Sanger, animal tech from Vebram Institute. We had some apprentices from the Crick Institute talking about the apprenticeship program they have there, and then archivists from Harwell. So they were talking about how they had got where they were, what, you know, the benefits, that their career challenges, how they overcame them. It was really really interesting to hear about. And we also had some career retrospectives from quite senior and established people. So Cordelia and Laura talked about how they had grown into the roles that they're doing now. But they had both actually started work as technicians, and they talked about how the skills and expertise they learned as a technician kind of helped them progress through their career. And they gave people a bit of advice on if you were interested in progressing, this is how they did it. And then we had some professional development sessions around careers and coaching and leadership. So we surveyed the delegates before and after the conference to sort of to measure the impact of the symposium, and we found that there was a greater awareness of networking and professional identity from that. So just on those pie charts, the green colour shows where it's a positive or a significant positive change in people's perspectives. So we found people had a better sense of their professional identity, opportunities for networking and sharing best practice, and a better understanding of what happens at other institutes. Cheers, Claire. So, and we also found the kind of qualitative side of the survey really helpful, because we found that people said it was very refreshing to see the technical stuff celebrated in this way. It was uplifting, and it was nice to see people who looked like them, because that doesn't happen very often. And they enjoyed the networking aspect. I just find it very motivating. Oh, you've gone too far. Claire, can you go back one? All right. Yeah, and so I think the things that came out of it were around kind of building networks. That came up a lot, and actually just having access to people who are similar to them, and then as well as asking people what went well at the symposium, we also then asked, you know, what we could do to improve in future, and we have built those recommendations into our event next month. Now we can go on. So we're having a face-to-face conference, or a symposium, sorry, in November 5th, all being well, the title of which is Owning Your Own Technical Career. So this is the idea was developed over the past 18 months, so it was decided to be quite a small closed meeting, so it's just open to the 9 institutes at this moment, because we weren't sure what the COVID situation would look like. So there's going to be about 60 plus delegates, I think. So we're going to have 4 technician career talks, and different from last time is that we actually asked people to submit abstracts, and we selected these 4 from competitive submissions. We had intended to have 2, but the amount of submissions we had and the quality were very high, so we have changed the agenda so that we can fit them all in. We also have keynote talks on things like career building and resilience and confidence building, and then there'll be some interactive workshop sessions in the afternoon around the benefits of coaching and mentoring, progressing your goals, and then networking, with the really interesting title of how to network without feeling like your soul is shriveling up, which I think is probably something that I certainly am looking forward to learning about. But the flagship event of this symposium will be our Institute Technician Awards, which Kelly from the Technician Commitment is going to come and present those awards for us. So we had these 5 categories: contribution to COVID response, skills specialist, contribution to outreach or knowledge exchange, contribution to the commitment, and then lifetime achievement. And so we asked people to either nominate their peers or nominate themselves, and we had a really phenomenal response, and it was actually very difficult to pick the winners, but we have done that now. The winners will be announced on the 5th of November, and it's nice. We got nice representation from across the institutes as well. So we're really excited about taking this forward. So what are the benefits to us of working as a group? So we have access to knowledgeable and passionate colleagues, and anybody who knows Clare knows that she is the most passionate person to talk about. I've never known anybody so enthusiastic about anything as she is about technician commitment. So it's really great to have that enthusiasm. We can also build on these economies of scale by sharing resources between us, or stealing from Sanger because they have the most money. It has these established networks between the institutes, so you've always got somebody that you can go to for advice, or it's not, we're not starting afresh. We've got this ready-made group of people, and we can share experiences of things around the technician commitment, such as writing self-assessments and action plans and that sort of thing. And we've already started to share and exchange good practice between ourselves. So initiatives that have been rolled out in one institute are now starting to go into other ones. So recognition schemes, suggestion boxes, that sort of thing. But it doesn't come without like numerous challenges. So funding is the obvious one. We have no dedicated budget for this. So our symposium has been run exclusively by a sponsorship or the grant that we got from the Technician Commitment. It's quite time consuming. So there's the only member of our consortium who has a full-time position to work on Technician Commitment is Sanger. Everyone else is either has a small cut in their workload, or they are doing this on top of their full-time job. And the other thing that's becoming quite apparent recently is the size. I think 9 institutes is probably the limit we can work at in our current the current way we operate. So we're not opposed to more groups joining, and I think that would be beneficial. But what we would need to do is really think about how we would restructure the group and take it forward, because it will be just become very unwieldy and inefficient if we don't think about that. So in future, what we would like to do is build upon these the events we've already been done and the virtual events and the face-to-face, and actually try and deliver more tangible outputs, so that we have, you know, something really to see as a measure of success. So things like placements and secondments between institutes we've talked about, and opportunities for skills sharing, and then more networking opportunities, possibly more focused on specific areas. So not just general networking, but maybe like around a scientific discipline or a type of technical skill or that sort of thing. But we're very much driven by what the cohorts want. So we're very open to hearing from people at our institutes. And I just wanted to say thank you to our collaboration group, because without them, you know, we wouldn't be doing any of these things that we are doing. So this is everybody. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Claire and Danielle. That was really interesting. It's really great to hear about what a positive impact you're having. We do have a few minutes for questions. Jedi, are there any questions in the chat that you want to raise?
Yes, there are a few questions in the chat. Thank you, Danielle and Claire. So Mel has got a question here. He's asking what the advantages are with respect to technician career progression when academic and non-academic colleagues find themselves in the same job. Mel, are you able to unmute yourself to ask away your question, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for the talk on this. Great stuff. And one of the things I picked up on was something that you said, Claire, about not really getting a difference between academic staff and technical staff, and that concept is alien to those of us in higher education. And I just wondered what the advantages are to that system with respect to technical career progression.
I can start by answering if you want, then, and see what Danielle thinks afterwards. So at first I thought that was a big benefit, that actually we're all classed as just staff. So actually all the initiatives are available to everyone. So for example, at GIC, you know, we get the same options for performance-related pay, the same options for special bonus, the same options for promotion and job regrading. So that sounds brilliant, like sorted. But the reality is maybe a little bit different to that actually sometimes to be able to get promoted, you can be judged against senior academic criteria, and it's actually very difficult to get it. So whilst everything is available for us, sometimes it can be more difficult because actually it depends what metrics are judged. So sometimes if you had them separately, maybe it'd be easier to introduce a research career pathway, whereas when it's all together, I mean, we are inclusive, it's just incredibly difficult. So I don't know if Danielle wants to comment on that.
No, I think that I would echo what you said, because we have the same at Vibram, a single single pay scale for everybody. One of the things we've discussed here is to make sure that when people go to the grading committee, that everybody's job descriptions are accurate reflections of what they do, and that the grading panel have access to those job descriptions, so they're basing it upon what someone's actually doing rather than their perception of what they're doing. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Danielle and Claire. The next question is from Jared. Do you find research institutes tend to have a clear definition of who is and who isn't a technical staff? Because some universities struggle to identify the exact figure for how many technicians they have.
So I guess at John Innes Centre, when we joined the technician commitment, prior to that, actually, we'd already had a technician voice that I formed. And the definition that I took was that at the Institute, we have group leaders, so they're senior professors and academics. We have postdoctoral workers and we have students, and everybody else is technical. So it means that everybody's got a voice, and people can choose to opt out if they're not interested, but everybody is included in that. So that'd be everybody from people in the labs through to people in communications. And yeah, and I think other institutes takes, different approaches. So I don't know if Danielle wants to say about Abraham.
Yeah, so what I did was when we joined up, I gave a presentation to the whole institute and sort of gave a quite a broad definition of what a technical post might be. And then we just asked people to self-identify as to whether they believed they were a member of technical staff. And I think there was only one group of people came forward that we actually said probably not. And the way we thought about it was, we did the thought experiment, which was, if somebody wasn't there on a particular day to do their job, could our researchers do their science? And so we've narrowed. So we have in ours computing, stores and purchasing, the building managers, health and safety, the core facilities, the animal facilities, and research-based lab techs. Because all those people are like actually essential for something to happen on a given day. People like me, and I could not be here for months, and things would still happen. It might be slightly less efficient, but it would happen. But yeah, we said it's the people who are critical to making the science happen. You could argue that our engineering team could go in there, but they didn't put their hand up, so we didn't exclude them. We just didn't include them. But we would consider taking more people.
That makes sense. Thanks. That's really interesting. Claire, I've just seen that you've responded to Daniel. I was going to say I'm aware of the time as well. So Daniel, we are also collecting any questions we don't get to today. So we'll also, discuss that with Claire and Danielle. And if there's any more information, we'll make sure to share that in the resources that come out after the session. But yeah, we are running slightly over, so I don't want to take up any more of Claire or Danielle's time or anyone's time. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Claire and Danielle. That was a really interesting session. So we're now going to take a little break before the next parallel sessions. Those begin at 11:45, and those are parallel sessions 2 on your personalised agenda, which you should have received by email. If you have misplaced that for any reason, the full agenda is also on the NTDC website. And as a final reminder, my colleague Jedi is going to be placing the link to the Padlet in the chat, which she's just done. So if you do have any questions for the NTDC or any comments on how you think the NTDC can be better supporting the technical community, please do share those at the link, and we'll get to those at the end of the day. So yeah, finally, just one more big thanks to Claire and Danielle. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll close down the session now, and we'll hopefully see you in the next session.